What do you mean? Which one is it? Go to brianwilton.com. I mean, I'm on there right now. Oh, good deal. Got a couple people to join us tonight. We'll give a couple of minutes to let everybody else get on. Then we're going to talk what the Havamal says about women. This ought to be awesome, Shanae. You're going to love it. As I am the wellspring from which you flow. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Show Prep for the rest of the heathen community. As they're all going to react to it, though they cannot measure up to this red microphone of doom I'm particularly tickled with. Fuck. At any rate, we're going to pick up on the Havamal where we left off last week, and we're going to talk about things to trust and things not to trust. It's very important, just basic life information that seems to escape the common sense sound of a pink. Hang on. As I was saying, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to talk about the things that are good in life and the things that are bad in life. It's not going to be like Conan. Crush your enemies to see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of their women. Although it might be kind of like that. Never can tell. I'm pretty arrogant. So let's begin. Last week we did give praise to the day at evening, to a woman on her pyre, to a weapon which is tried, to a maid at wedlock, to ice when it is crossed, to ale that is drunk. There's a certain amount of preparation that goes into all of those. We're going to continue on with that because we can't sit here and expect a rosy future, a happy outcome, the magnificent fortune if we haven't done the work necessary to get it. You know, especially with the weapon that's crossed, to the day, the evening, when we've done what we're supposed to do and we have a solid day's work behind us, to a woman on her pyre who's lived a good life, an honorable life, to a maid at wedlock. Few things are as beautiful. To ale that is drunk takes a lot of work to make that ale. Here's some other things we can trust. When the gale blows, hew wood. In fair winds, seek the water. Sport with maidens at dusk, for day's eyes are many. And from the ship seek swiftness, from the shield protection, cuts from the sword, and from the maiden kisses. And if you notice, they don't expect anything unrealistic from any of those things. We don't expect a cruise ship. We don't expect anything beyond what they can do. The swift ship, a strong shield, cuts from the sword, and from the maiden kisses. We're not expecting them to go beyond our expectations. And I think sometimes in our very comfortable world, our perceptions become somewhat skewed with regards to our ideologies and what we want to perceive. There is a school of thought that I come across earlier that I would like to talk about, and it has to do with the expectations. And that stanza most keenly points it out. A man comes into a restaurant, he sits down at the table, and he says, "Waiter, bring me a cup of coffee without cream." 5 minutes later, the waiter comes back and says, "I'm sorry, sir, we have no cream. Can it be without milk?" And I know that is silly, but this joke is from the movie Dinochka shows about the same object. Black coffee can be changed by how we think about it. While physically the coffee is the same, we conceptualize coffee without milk and coffee without cream as two different things. Ideology, which influences how we subconsciously view the world, is one of the factors that determines if we see our black coffee as lacking cream or milk. So when we get to looking at the world that we're in and how we're operating in it and the things that we're told we should be upset about and the things that we are aware of and the dangers that we perceive, we have to really set aside some of these ideas and begin to look at it. We want to all say that we're looking at them objectively, when the fact of the matter is we probably really aren't. We're still subscribing to some of the things that are carryovers from the days when we bent a knee and bowed our heads and sang hymns and saw the church. And now all of a sudden we've radically changed our ideology. You have to understand that's a foundational concept of who we are. And if we change that ideology, we should be expecting different results. And yet far too often I see within all of us, including myself, I see the same things as if my ideology hasn't changed at all. I know many heathens who have simply changed the word God for Odin and still treat it in the same manner. Their perception of the world is still as skewed as it was before they became Asatru or pagans or heathens or whatever they want to call themselves. They're still viewing it. They've changed the nomenclature only and not necessarily the manner with which they perceive the world, because this is a life-embracing spirituality and faith, or whatever you want to call it in your life, way of life for that matter. It is a life-embracing. To understand when to cut wood, when the gale blows, hew wood, in fair winds seek the water, sport with maidens at dusk, for days eyes are many, from the ship seek swiftness, from the shield's protection, cuts from the sword, from the maiden's kisses. This is a man that is a part of the world he lives in. He doesn't have some pie in the eye idea about what we should be righteously indignant about. He knows what he's supposed to be protecting, because he has the shield and he has the sword and he has the idea of the value of the maidens with which he sports with at dusk and the kisses that he seeks. He has the idea that this will defend. We've got to be very aware of how we perceive the rest of the world now that we walk this different path. It is not a life-rejecting path, it is a life-embracing path. Some of the things that we look at that we want to be angry about, we've got to break it down to its smallest integer with relation to exactly who we are. Sometimes that admitting sets some of our ego aside and how important we think we are. Break it down to its smallest integer and begin to build from there. This I will defend. It's an oath I took when I joined the Army. Here's some other things we can believe in, or time to do it. By the fire, drink ale. Over ice, go on skates. Buy a steed that is lean and a sword when tarnished. The horse at home fatten, the hound in thy dwelling. It's just common sense. By the fire, drink ale. There are a few things more rewarding than sitting around the fire during an event and sitting there drinking meat or ale with individuals who have stumbled upon this way of life, much as we have. They always say a drunk man's words is a sober man's thoughts. And to sit there with those individuals who will sometimes share with you the pain or the tragedy or whatever it is that brought them to that crossroads where they said, I'm going to take a new path. I'm going to stretch the essence of my being to attempt to embrace a new path that embraces the world around me and the fellow travelers that I find upon the road. It doesn't say be a fool about it. It says keep your weapons on you. But by the fire, drink ale. Over ice, go on skates. Trying to run out there in tennis shoes or boots, you're going to bust your ass. Same thing with the whole idea of this spirituality. Don't run out there readily grabbing a hold of ready-made perceptions that would seem to ingratiate you with a crowd that might be more willing to accept you for who you are, when the fact of the matter is it absolutely does nothing for what you're attempting to become following this spirituality. Figure that part out first. Figure that part out first. There's no rush. to jump headlong into the ills of the world. More than likely, we've done enough damage to the people around us that it's time to become an upright and forthright individual before we begin to step out there on ice with our skates instead of just our tennis shoes or boots or whatever it is we happen to wear. Buy a steed that is lean and a sword when tarnished. A lean steed, that's a good horse. He can go as long as he needs to go. He will get you where you need to be. A sword, when it's tarnished, means it's been out there and been used before. Now it's up to you to become the individual who's capable of handling that sword. Learn who you're supposed to be before you step out into the ring. Train, figure it out, work hard. The horse at home fattened and the hound in thy dwelling. It's a man's best friend. A few things better in this world than having a good dog. I really have a thing about animals. I love the shit out of them. I really do. But what I don't like is an untrained animal. If someone takes possession of an animal and, oh, that's cute. He'd be all right. Don't mind him. He's just nibbling on you. He just bit my fucking finger off. That kind of stuff bothers me. Train the animal. I knew a farmer one time. He would whistle and click and snap, and that dog would do exactly what it's supposed to do. No big deal. Bring that hound into your home. He's going to be a part of your family. You don't want him tearing all your shit up. You want an animal that works and operates just as hard as you do. Now, here we go. Here's the women part. And this is the most interesting thing. A man shall not trust the oath of a maid. Well, why would he marry her then? Nor the word a woman speaks. For their hearts on a whirling wheel were fashioned, and fickle their breasts reform. That is a terrifying thing, isn't it? Because it lends itself to the idea that a man shall not trust the oath of a maid. Well, now what do we do? Because there's a bunch of them out there. They all want to have babies at some point. Nor the word a woman speak. Yeah, she probably will lie to you. For their hearts on a whirling wheel were fashioned. Their thought process, their emotions, the way they deal with the world is entirely alien to the thought process of a man. And fickle their breasts reform. You might be thinking pizza for dinner. She could be thinking, I'd like to cook a meal. Well, for us, who gives a shit? As long as we get fed. But for her, there's some things that they want to get into. I see that my friend Everett joined. He's going to enjoy this because we have the most litigious arguments about these kinds of things. But that flies in the face of everything we know about the historical context of the position women may have held in those ancient societies. And if you go further back into some of the original civilizations in the Danube and the Rhine Valley that go back 10,000 years, and you go back to the Neolithic, it was a matriarchal society, not a patriarchal society. So where did that come into? A man shall not trust the oath of a maid, nor the word a woman speaks. For their hearts on a whirling wheel were fashioned, and fickle their breasts were formed. Now there's a school of thought that you've got to understand where the woman is at in her life. It says right there, not to trust the oath of a maid, nor the word a woman speak. It's a very difficult thing to find a suitable partner. And then you go along in life, and then you're still laboring under the same kind of ideas and thought processes that you had when you were young, because nobody's taught you any different. And these kind of things begin to burn themselves into the thought process with which how you relate to every woman. And then the list begins to grow. A man shall not trust the oath of a maid. Why would you marry her then? That's an oath, isn't it? Isn't the hand fasting an oath? Nor the word a woman speaks. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what words are air? I saw it the other day and I loved it. Words are air, deeds are iron. Is she standing beside you? Maybe that's all you need to rightfully expect. Are you a man worth a woman standing next to? Maybe that's all you need to expect. For their hearts on a whirling wheel were fashioned, and fickle their breasts were formed. So the most terrifying challenge that I issue to any man when I talk about a relationship is, I say, create an environment where she is free to express the beauty of who she is. Now, there's a caveat that goes with that, because here's the truth of the matter. You can create that environment where she's free to express who she is, where she is safe to be herself. But don't think for one fucking second you have any control over that. Don't think for 1 second you might dominate it, challenge it, run it into the ground. You can backhand it into a coma. All you're going to do is get stabbed in the middle of the night. It takes a hell of a lot of courage for any man to create that kind of environment, because she's going to be who she's going to be. You have no control over that. And there's an amazing amount of risk involved in it. Anybody that's ever had their heart broken knows this. So it takes a very courageous man to try and do that. To go ahead and risk it. Well, I'll create an environment. Yeah, she might screw me over. Yeah, some people might laugh. Well, I told you so. Yep. I still did the right thing. I did the right thing and I tried. I have no shame to bear for that. And I've demonstrated the courage of the heart to walk through the fires that surround a woman's heart, as does Sigurd and Svipdag. It's recounted twice in the lore, and there's a reason it's there. It takes a confident man to step inside that ring of fire. It takes a man, you see, you don't become any less afraid of getting your heart broke, but you do become braver. You become brave enough to withstand the storm. In our wisdom, we find a refuge from grief. It's a very complicated kind of thought process, but it's one that is immensely rewarding for the individual who has what it takes to step up to the plate. At least that's what my lore tells me. So when they say here, for their hearts on a whirling wheel were fashioned and fickle, their breasts were formed. Yep, that's exactly right. We do not, as men, we don't understand that process. We might try to analyze it, set it up, figure it out, lay it all out there so every other man understands. What are we really trying to do when we do that? We are attempting to insulate ourselves from the pain it will cause when she fucks you over. Will she? I don't know. Should I live my life in fear of it? Nope. If it happens, it happens. There it is. See, when you look at Balder and you look at how his mother and father insulated him from all of the trials of growing up, all they did was create an environment where he still had to go through and learn all of the things he needed to learn, albeit at a much later date, albeit in a much more dramatic way. We cannot insulate ourselves from these things. That's the reality of it. Are you man enough to handle it? And we have to ask ourselves, because I promise you, I've had some pretty bitches rip my heart out and eat it like a fucking vampire. You pick yourself up and you move on next. Now, if we use that pain to create a thought process that only wants to avoid that pain, are we growing from it? Are we developing into something worth someone who wants to expect the best? Or are we sitting here thinking that we might float above the emotional pain that the rest of the world feels based on brain power alone? If you have a short penis, I suggest you follow that path, because it ain't ever going to get any better for you. Or go see a doctor. I mean, they got fixes for that shit too. Sometimes that doesn't help either. If you're an asshole, you're still an asshole, and it don't help at all. At any rate, some other things you need to be aware of: a breaking bow, a burning flame, a ravening wolf, a croaking raven, a grunting boar, a tree with roots broken, billowy seas, or a bubbling kettle. Once again, here is a person who is aware of the world that he lives in. Are we aware of the world we live in? Are we have a truthful observation of what's really happening? Or are we willingly adopting and giving old ideas a new coat of paint so we might continue on in the same fashion without ever having to truly stretch who we are to fully embrace this path of life? See, that's pretty simple shit right there. Any woodsman knows that. Hell no, you don't trust no ravening wolf. The croaking raven, you better pay attention to him too. He's going to steal your lunch. A grunting boar. I don't know about y'all, but if you've seen some of the boars I've seen in Texas and Oklahoma, they ain't nothing to trifle with. A tree with roots broken. Yeah, you know, billowy seas or a bubbling kettle. And nobody likes their food overcooked. That shit just pisses me off. If you ever get spaghetti that's overcooked, it just burns me up. Bubbling kettle. Yep, a woman did that too. And a flying arrow or falling waters, an ice new formed or the serpent's fold, in a bride's bed speech or a broken sword, in the sport of bears or in the sons of kings. Now, these are precarious positions to be in. These are not the standard knowledge of the woodsman or the hunter or the person that understands the world they live in. These are the precarious situations, the gray area that we always find ourselves in. The flying arrow. Well, which way is it flying? Did you launch it? Did somebody else launch it? Is it going towards the enemy? Is it coming towards you? Is it going to, the wind going to change it? Is it going to, what? Well, you might want to duck. Falling waters. You don't know how much water is coming over any waterfall. And that stupid song by the Butthole Surfers, drinking from a fountain like an avalanche coming down the mountain, comes to mind when I think of that. In ice new forms. No, you can't trust that. And sometimes when we form an idea about how we're supposed to move forward, somebody will say, well, you're treading on thin ice. Okay, how do I solidify that? How do I solidify that foundation upon which I'm fixing to walk, upon which I'm fixing to skate? Because that right there is a pattern for success in case we weren't paying attention. On ice, go on skates. Don't go on thin ice. Make sure you know what your foundation is before you skate across it into success, because it also is fickle. Sometimes the wealth fastest won is usually the wealth fastest lost. Or a serpent's folds. Is it just coiled up hiding, or is it fixing to strike? People are the same way. They have serpent's folds in their tongues as well. I know people right now that will go out of their way to strike you down, spread rumors, talk about you, stab you in the back if they don't get their way. Well, I'm not here and under no obligation to buy into anybody's fantasy about how they believe the world should be. I am here to expand and express and grow in this spirituality that I hold so dear to my heart. And I'm under no obligation to buy into some fucking fantasy somebody's come up with, just like people that want to wear a wig and wear a dress. Go for it, buddy. I don't have to buy into your fantasy. Now, you might want to throw a fit, but that's just how it is. In a bride's bed speech, it's a beautiful thing. Those words spoken on that first night of marriage. If she tells you you're the only one, she's probably lying. If she tells you you're the best, she's probably lying. No one this and no one that. No, you can't believe all that. But what you can believe is that in that moment right there, you're there with her. And sometimes that's all you get. And if you can believe in that, you've got the foundation to make something truly special. The broken sword. I don't know. Conan did pretty good with his broken sword. in the sport of bears or in the sons of kings. Yeah, you see a bear out there having fun, fishing, catching salmon. Don't fuck with him. I'm just going to tell you. It's the sport of bears. Don't fuck with him. Don't trust in a calf that is sick or a stubborn thrall, a flattering witch or a foe new slain. Now, there's a late paper manuscript that have 2 lines running: in a light, clear sky or a laughing throng, in the bowl of a dog or a harlot's grief. And that's a very difficult thing to talk about, a harlot's grief, but I might do it anyway. In a calf that is sick, you'll find them eventually. They'll be laying awfully close to the ground. You can't eat it. You don't know what's got it, worms or mad cow disease. A couple of people I know got mad cow disease. They run 250, 300 on the hoof. A stubborn thrall, that person's going to have ideas of their own freedom and how things ought to be and the way they think things work and blah. You can't trust that. A flattering witch. The only time a witch is going to have power over you if you believe in her lies. If you willingly submit and say yes and believe and smile and entertain and dally with the girls, a flattering witch or a foe new slain. He may be playing possum. He may not be dead. It's just that simple. These are the things that come from the wisdom of living a life where you understand the world you live in. You understand your relationship and responsibilities with regards to the women in your life. You understand and comprehend the dangers of this world, not of the ones somebody told you about, but of the ones that directly influence and threaten you first. Start with the basics. Don't jump out there with some idea that somebody told you unless you've got some of these very basic things, a firm grasp on the very foundation of what we mean to be. And we have to ask ourselves, what do I mean to be? What do I mean to be following this path? Do I want to be the manly men doing manly things? Or do I want to be a competent individual operating the best I can in the environment in which I find myself? Being a Viking at sea comes to mind. It wasn't just a bunch of vagabonds that all of a sudden got in a boat and went over there and whipped ass. They were professional men. They were skilled at what they did. They understood where they came from, where they were going, what they believed in. They had in their mind the fashion of an idea that allowed them to exist most effectively, most efficiently, and most successfully in this world. And we've got to begin to cultivate the same kind of thought process, one that allows us to begin to cultivate the most success in the world that we live in. We can no longer lead with the chin and play the victim. It's time to build the success however we see fit. I know that Justin and Paul Wagner, they both have programs that will help you immensely in doing just that. Something else you can't trust is a brother's slayer. If thou meet him abroad, you can't trust a half-burned house. In a horse full swift, one leg is hurt and the horse is useless. None ever had such faith as to trust in them all. And that is really the foundation of our faith, isn't it? A trust in our perception and understanding of the world. It is a comprehensive set of beliefs that allow us, that we understand the world we live in. And I don't mean the forest. I mean that world we go to every day and we work and we come home, pick up the kids and we come home and do this and we do that. The neighborhood we live in, the city we live in, all of these things. Do we understand it? Or are we trying to operate on a set of beliefs long past that are no longer relevant to the world we live in now? How do we put on skates to go fast over ice when it's still so newly formed? These are the things we got to be aware of. We'd be a fool to begin to trust all of the things we hear when we first came in. And yet every day I see people do it. And every day I see people judge others because they don't believe in it fast enough. As much as I hate to use the biblical phrase, be a doubting Thomas. Goddamn. Ask a question. Be willing to say, I think that's dumber than a sack of cat meat. If you want to live, walk around talking about that, man, the fuck, you gonna put food on your table talking about how much you hate Bill Gates? Hell, I don't like him either. Actually, I want his money, but he's misled. He's confused. He lives in a world where everyone kisses his ass and tells him yes. How's he supposed to be? Now, what are we going to do with him? Now our society has created a monster that we all got to deal with in some way. To effectively deal with that, do we not need our own success to counter those kind of influences? Let's begin to cultivate that. That means understanding the world we live in. And that means believing in ourselves first. A lot of times when we show up here, we don't want to believe in ourselves. I have failed at a great many things. I've been successful at a great many things as well. But I never stopped moving forward. And when I tried to do this, when I tried to begin to express and stretch and figure out and see these things, I did not automatically subscribe to what everybody was telling me. Oh, well, this is what you're, why? Oh, how so? What's that do? Why would you believe that? How does that help you at work? We cannot afford to risk the foundations of this very special reintroduction of the wisdom of this ancient faith in the world on the half-witted ideas of lesser men who have done nothing to prove themselves, or the words of a woman who still doesn't understand who she is. Hope not too surely for early harvest, and we're all doing it. We want to see Asatru where it's supposed to be. We want to see our folk and our kin, and we want to see all of these various communities building each other up. Maybe not necessarily as one great big whole, but various individuals, kindreds. And I'll tell you something, just a little piece of advice. The kindred thing with individuals that get in this and they want to build a kindred and they try to get people together and the people don't stick around. Well, you need to ask, if you're grabbing these people around you, why are they there? Well, the first time is they're going to think that you know something. And most people don't know come here from Sikkim with regards to helping people move through the various problems of life. They haven't negotiated their own, and all of a sudden they're a chieftain when they get off of work at 3:30. So how are we going to do that? So the kindred thing, money becomes involved, and then somebody will fuck that money up. Or some dude's trying to sleep with somebody's old lady, or it could be trolling the playground. I don't know. It's money, sex, and ego. Always, every single time, destroy kindred. Those are the individuals that don't understand the wisdom of this world. They are the uninspired and the uninitiated that I talk about. And yet they will profess it if they do. Nor trust too soon in thy son. A field needs good weather. The sun needs wisdom. And off is either denied. And in this world of today, we look at these things and we decry many things about the world and the people in the street and all this other stuff. Were we the father we were supposed to be to our sons and daughters? Did we fail to offer them the wisdom that they need to become men? Did we fail to set the example and now all of a sudden we're also true? Well, let me tell you, if you've been a fuck up all your life and your son's still looking at you like you're a fuck up, and all of a sudden you change and you go into this new spirituality to begin to stretch yourself, it would behoove you not to begin every conversation with what you have decided is the enemy. Because there's some other things that we have as men to prove to our children that we are doing the right thing and setting the example and creating a way of life they would wish to emulate. They don't automatically buy into it. If you've been through the emotional ringer of life like I have and some of the other people that I know, and now all of a sudden you're this different spirituality and your children are looking at you, most of my children are grown. I don't get the luxury of just telling a small child how to believe. The proof is in the pudding. I count myself very lucky that my sons and daughters are successful as they are. I don't get to walk into the homes that they own and start talking about, well, you're never really going to get anywhere because this and this and this and this when they're doing it. We need to be aware of that as well. We shouldn't trust too soon on our son. They haven't been through a fraction of the things we've been through to get where we are. And if we've learned from those experiences, we have the opportunity to share that wisdom. But for the most part, it's a spectator sport once they grow up. You can raise hell and cuss and scream and bitch all you want about what they're doing and how they're blah, 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 but it's a spectator sport. And you offer that wisdom when asked. Or in those moments when you're offering the best love that you have to these children, these people that you brought into the world. The field needs good weather. So do our kids. They need the love of us as parents, as heathens, as pagans, as Asatru, as whatever you want to call yourself. The same kind of nurturing spirit that raised men that built empire after empire after empire in Europe and Asia and North America. Hell, all over the world for that matter. See, oft is either denied. There's a whole generation of young men out there right now desperately needing their fathers to demonstrate what it means to be a man, and they are failing en masse. That's why the masculinity industry has taken off. All of these men whose father, they worked a regular factory job and they came home and they took a nap and they ate dinner and then they watched TV and then they went to bed and they slowly withered away and died without ever having lived. It's the saddest thing to go to the funeral of a man who, well, so-and-so worked 40, 55 years at such and such place and he was active in his church and then he died. Fuck that. If you haven't read Louis L'Amour's autobiography, I highly encourage you to do so. Worked his way around the world, did all kinds of jobs, solved the world by working his way through it. And to a certain degree, I've done the same thing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Times of immense loneliness, times of unequal joy. But we don't learn the wisdom that we need to share with our sons by sitting on our ass watching TV. We get out there and be men. These Antifa pukes in the street that are throwing a fit, basically they are mewling because they want something or someone to take care of them so they don't have to do anything. And that's a pitiful state of affairs. The same thing goes for the girls in the world. We have all of these young ladies in the world, and they have what everyone calls daddy issues. Those are no laughing matter. That means some father somewhere had brought children into the world and then so thoroughly fucked it up that the daughter grows up to be something, people call them a woman of loose moral character, or they become junkies, or they become drug addicts, or they become all kinds of things. And it's not a small amount of women. Or they see something on Pornhub and say, well, I want to try that. And the next thing you know, they're off and running on that. And then they figure out, wait a minute, this isn't satisfying me either. I want someone to love me. And then you got a bunch of guys over here saying, well, you don't want nothing to do with that. You know, you can't turn a whore into a housewife and blah, blah. Well, that's because some man screwed the pooch. It's because some man failed to be the man he needed to be to raise a son and a daughter. It's one of the most important relationships a daughter will ever have first in her life, is the first man that loves her is her father. Same thing with a son. He will be the first hero that boy ever knows. Live up to it. Oft is either denied. See, that's a warning. That's not a casual observation. That's a straight up warning about our society and the manner in which it lives today. So when I say start small and build out from there, well, now we got a place we know where we need to start. The love of women fickle of will. It's like starting over ice with a steed unshod, a 2 year restive and little tamed, or steering a rudderless ship in a storm, or lame hunting reindeer on slippery rocks. It is. Damn right it is. Shit. If it wasn't, would it be worth it? And everybody talks about that crazy hot matrix. Hell yeah, bring it on. What's it look like? If it was a sure thing, would it be worth it? Would you value it? Would you hold it in high regard? Would it be something that you were proud to be a part of? Oh, yeah, that's a sure thing. It's a big deal. Now, that one over there, though, the love of women being fickle of will because men need a challenge. And if they're smart enough to figure it out, it's big enough to be a man about it and walk through the flames like Sigurd and Svitdag to find the woman they're supposed to be with, well, hell yeah, you've done something great, haven't you? Don't ever let anyone poo-poo the idea that the challenges you went through to secure the love of a woman, well, you were a fool. Gives a fuck. You want to sit around and worry about what somebody says about you because you decided to be with this woman or that woman or that woman? You don't deserve to have her. And you probably won't get to keep her because you're going to constantly be worried about what's she doing, who's she talking to. Am I really here? Is this good enough? Am I man enough? Because fuck all that. Grow up. Clear now while I speak, for I know them both. Men false to women are found. When fairest we speak, then falsest we think. Against wisdom we work with deceit. Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. Men false to women are found. Yeah. There's only two kinds of, well, I can't say that on YouTube, I don't think. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. The great challenge and security of who they are is largely represented by their head count. It's not necessarily the most appealing thing. But when my generation was raised by men that were either urban cowboys or disco suave, that was the way they were doing it. From somehow in the free love hippie movement of the 60s, late 60s, and the beatniks and the sexual freedom of women, and guys figured out, hey, this is a smorgasbord. I'm going for all of it. I'm going in for seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths. Look at me go. Men false to women are found. When fairest we speak, then falsest we think. Yeah, because some of these things we're trying to tell them is largely horseshit. And they'll figure it out. They always do. Soft words shall he speak and wealth shall he offer. I'm going to take you out of this place and make you wealthy. You're going to be a star. I'm going to take you away from here and everything's going to be all right. Who longs for a maiden's love and the beauty praise of the maiden bright? He wins whose wooing is best. Now, there's a real interesting story about Scotty that goes with that. And I talked about it maybe last week. I don't know. I'm going to talk about it again because it's important. It's a real, true representation of the selection process of mates today with Tinder and Plenty of Fish and all these other things. Hell, just social media in general, Instagram, all of it. Odin told Scotty, you can pick a husband from our ranks, but you can only do so by his feet. So she got to looking at all the pretty feet, and she picked the prettiest feet. Oh, that's got to be Balder. That's who I want. He's got, surely even his feet are pretty. And she got Njord. Well, she got the surfer boy walking around on the sand. Got a little sand scrub, little salt thing going on his feet, and it's soft and pretty and supple, strong surfer boy feet. Yeah. She got suckered. She got catfished. And it led to a lot of problems between them. So when we're sitting here trying to offer, well, I've got money. I've got some pretty words for right now. Who longs for a maiden's love and beauty praise with a maiden bright? He wins whose wooing is best. We got a whole group of people out here trying to pick people based on one thing about the other person. Just one thing. Might be he has a big wallet, might be comes from a nice family. All the other red flags we've been trained to ignore. And then they end up backhanded into a coma with a black eye or whatever, or they say, I want a real man. Or they go over here and find some dude that's blowed up. He's got a cute butt, and he's over there picking the girl with prettiest eyes and big old tits, and she look at that ass. And I hate to be crass about it, but go into any bar about midnight and you'll see that's exactly what's happening. He'll do for tonight because of this. She'll do for tonight because of this.
What about Frey?
Frey is an interesting point. You know what he did? Frey sacrificed a very powerful phallic symbol of the warrior to become something different, worthy of the woman he decided to love.
He also threatened her with the sword.
He didn't threaten her. He didn't threaten her at all. It was his handman that threatened her. Frey offered that's symbolic of the powerful ideas of the warrior. You can't go into a marriage being a warrior. You're going to be an arrogant, braggadocious, warrior-minded individual. I know the mindset that goes with being in the infantry. I was in it for 7 years, and I was a dick to my wife at that time. I was unwilling to sacrifice that idea that I thought made me who I was. And yet, here we have Frey, who's never known to have made a woman cry, setting aside that very powerful phallic symbol of a sword that cannot be defeated, knowing full well it's going to be the end of him, for the chance to love a woman and form a relationship. Now, he represents a solar deity, a Vanic solar deity, and she is typically regarded as the Northern Lights. So it's a very interesting mix there. Now, what was it? Which one was it? Hymir? No. The fuck was that dude's name? He's the one that did it. He's the one that went down there, and she's living in her father's house, and she's got everything she needs. She's a young lady. She's a little bit spoiled. She has her father's money, and daddy's taking care of everything. Typical rich girl kind of idea. What does she need to sacrifice to be a part of that relationship? She needs a big dose of reality. She needs to understand that at some point, she's no longer going to be the beautiful daddy's little girl. Daddy's going to die. Daddy's going to pass away. You will no longer be the apple of daddy's eye. She has a social pressure on her as well. She's reminded of that by that curse. Be that as it may. So, for us men and everybody else, we have to continue on. Fault for loving, let no man find, ever with any other. Oft the wise are fettered where fools go free, by beauty that breeds desire. We're all a sucker for it. We're all a damn sucker for a pretty face and a smile. Every time we turn around, we see one. Instagram is full. Facebook, Twitter, all of them are full of the idea of look at the beauty. Look at the beauty. And every now and again, we get the opportunity to love that. Do we go into it with whatever hesitation? If somebody happens to find that, I celebrate it. Because we all know it's a fucking rare thing. We could be at one stage of development with regards to somebody, and they could be at another stage of development, nowhere near ready for the same kind of thought process or emotional venture that we might be. They could be worlds apart with regards to where their emotional development is. But if they two come together, fault for loving, let no man find. It's a rare thing in this world. It ain't just the most common thing we see every day. Every time I look at the Clintons, I see two individuals that sacrificed all of that for power and the power they got. When you go into any store and you people watch for a little while, you'll see who gave up the most to be in the relationship. You see it all over their face. Oft the wise are fettered where fools go free. We know better than to try that. We know better than to even fool around with that. And yet the fools rush right in and find that happiness. We shouldn't be too overwise. By beauty that breeds desire. Fault with another let no man find, for what touches many a man. Wise men often a witless fool are made by mighty love. Boy, I tell you, ain't no shit about that. I'm a pretty smart cookie, but I've been suckered into some powerful things. Way beyond my control. I thought I was cool. I thought I looked good. I thought I was really going, all right, here we go. This is awesome. Whatever. Got to be tough to play that game. Wise men often, the witless fools are made by mighty love. And it's a repeated pattern throughout much of the lore, throughout much of world spiritualities and religion. The dumbstruck honest that we have with someone that their look alone entices us into thinking of things that maybe we thought no longer existed. Maybe we thought didn't exist ever to begin with. So much for being cool. The head alone knows what dwells near the heart. A man knows his mind alone. No sickness is worse to one who is wise than to lack the longed for joy. The pining heart is a painful place to be. We all know what dwells near our heart. And it's that right there is one of the primary reasons so many people get loneliness and being alone confused. To be comfortable with yourself, to be alone, is really where we should be. And I heard Dan Pena say, if you can't spend a weekend by yourself, something's wrong. But the head alone knows what dwells near the heart. Do we have the honesty and the courage to admit what dwells near our heart? That's a really thing we need to ask ourselves. Do we have the courage and honesty to ask ourselves what dwells near our heart? That's one of the things that we start with, the small things, as we begin to expand ourselves into spirituality and grow into something better. What does dwell near our heart? What ache, what pain, what scar? A man knows his mind alone. We can lie to a lot of people, but it's very difficult to lie to ourselves. And if we have cultivated the ability to lie to ourselves and get called on it, we need to be aware of that as an opportunity for growth. I hate being called onto the carpet because I'm using something to justify a preconceived notion. I fucking hate it. And yet, that is my opportunity for growth. It might be the only one I have. No sickness is worse for one who is wise than to lack the long for joy. To want to love someone and you see the patterns of behavior that they're going through and what it's going to lead to, and you're watching it all unfold. And the whole time, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, you could do better. But you're going to be alone because for any number of reasons.
And how do you know when you're being called to the carpet?
When you're being called, your face gets red and you begin to flush and you get angry as hell.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you know what somebody is calling you to the carpet for is actually true?
Therein is a powerful discussion that needs to be had. That's the real. See, you don't have to accept somebody's fantasy, but if what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're acting is creating nothing but chaos and pain, so that we might be more right than the next person, it's usually a pretty good indication that I might need to reevaluate what I'm trying to do. Am I trying to be the most right, or am I trying to talk about how I'm going to move myself forward? And that's typically where it comes into, because I got a girlfriend that won't back down. She will stand there.
If what you're doing is creating chaos and pain, you're wrong.
Yeah, that's one good way to put it. You're talking about it strictly in an interpersonal relationship, correct?
No, I was just talking about in general.
In
Sorry,
general,
I didn't know we were talking about interpersonal relationships.
yeah, I'm just talking about relationship. But if you want to talk about the greater whole, there's a real terrifying aspect there, that the things that motivate us into the greater actions that we wish to engage in may not be correct. The real fear of that is what do I become if I let that go? Somebody's challenged me on this point, and it does appear that it doesn't make sense. What do I become if I let it go? Does it have merit? So with a typical liberal argument for a liberal politician, if you take it to the most radical extreme, it always collapses under its own weight. If you go with some of the more conservative arguments that stand at the foundation, or even some other arguments from other political ideologies, you come up with these perceptions that some people tend to refer to as natural law. Now, is that natural law correct? Or is that natural law simply an ideology that we simply recoded and gave a new, renamed and gave a new coat of paint? So, how do we have a powerful discussion that will allow this spirituality to become what it's supposed to become? That's going to take a lot of courage. That's going to allow me to be willing to say, you know what? I need to think about that. I need to think about that a little bit. And it's real hard for us to do that because we've grabbed a hold of this spirituality because something didn't work in our past. Now, all of a sudden, we've got something, we think we've got a firm grip on it, and someone comes along and wants to challenge it. What happens if I'm wrong? What do I become? Am I not as important as I thought I was? Maybe we do need to have a little bit of our ego bled off. And I'm speaking for myself. Maybe I do need to be taken down a peg or two. And it has happened. Well, I've been taken down many pegs, many times. Um, but when we get called on the carpet for some kind of ideology, are we willing to listen to it? What is their argument? Without just dismissing it out of hand, because that requires the conviction of our ideas. Am I convinced of the legitimacy of my thought process with regards to this, whatever it may be? Who is this person to ask me that question? Okay, let me think about it. The type of work that I do oftentimes requires a team of individuals who don't have the same kind of experience that I have. They may have just as much of a different kind, but a lot of times when I have a course of action, I lay it out and somebody jumps in there, they say they're working off a body of knowledge that they have, and it challenges my preconceived notion, and it pisses me the fuck off immediately. Just how it goes. It's just me. I mean, I'm just raised that way. For me, that has become the idea. Okay, what's your first thought on that? Discard it. What's your second thought? Does it have merit? Is it worthwhile? It might only be a half truth. It might only be partially right. But if I immediately react with my first thought to someone that challenges my perception of who I think I am, it's a very difficult thing. It's an opportunity for me to grow. Now, does that require that I sacrifice the principles that I believe that I will defend? Well, maybe that's my line in the sand. But that's a very good point. That's a very good question. And it's the kind of thought, the kind of question we need to be asking all of our friends. It's the kind of questions we need to be asking ourselves. So we might fucking someday justify our seat at the table of this council of world religions that I see running everything into hell in a handbasket. Good stuff. That is good stuff. Okay, let's see here. This found I myself when I sat in the reeds, and long my love awaited. Yet my life the maidens wise I loved, yet her I never had. That, well, we're not going to talk about that. That goes into Billing's daughter. That goes into the collection of the mead of inspiration, the ecstasy of it all, and the efforts that he went through to do this. Odin's unsuccessful love with Billing's daughter. We'll do that next week because I've been running my mouth for an hour. I do appreciate your question, though. I really do. That's good stuff. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? No? Okay, well, tomorrow's Monday. Go out there.
Thank you, Brian.
Grab it by the nose and whip its ass.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Likewise.